Today, we're counting down 3 fascinating Washington quarters that could turn an overlooked piece of pocket change into an unforgettable discovery. You won't want to miss the final coin because its value has shocked even experienced collectors. At first glance, this 1980 Washington quarter may not look like anything special. It's old, it's dirty, and after decades of changing hands, the details have softened from years of everyday use. Most people would spend it without giving it a second thought, but experienced collectors know that appearances can be deceiving. Some of the most valuable coins ever discovered started out looking just like this one. That's exactly why you should never ignore an old Washington quarter until you've taken a closer look. The 1980 Washington quarter was struck during a time when billions of coins were entering circulation across America. Designed by John Flanagan, the familiar portrait of George Washington appears on the front, while the majestic eagle with outstretched wings stands proudly on the reverse. Even after years of circulation, you can still recognize the classic design that has become one of the most collected coins in U.S. history. This example shows the characteristics of a fine circulated coin. Washington's hair has noticeable wear, and many of the finer details have faded over time. The lettering remains readable, although it has softened from decades of handling. The reverse eagle also shows wear, with many of the feathers blending together. The coin's dark color and dirty surface tell the story of a quarter that has faithfully served in circulation for many years. While some people are tempted to clean coins like this, collectors strongly recommend leaving them exactly as they are. Cleaning can permanently damage the original surface and often reduces collector value. Now here's where things become exciting. A normal 1980 Washington quarter in fine condition usually carries only a modest premium over face value. However, that's only the beginning of the story. The real treasure hunt starts when you begin searching for unusual characteristics. Collectors carefully examine every 1980 quarter for off-center strikes, broad strikes, clipped planchets, dramatic die cracks, double dies, missing clad layers, and other genuine mint errors. These mistakes occurred during the minting process and can transform an ordinary-looking quarter into a highly desirable collectible. Another important detail is the mint mark. Coins from Philadelphia have no mint mark, while Denver coins display a small D above the date area on the obverse. Each mint produced millions of quarters, but certain error combinations are far scarcer than others. A certified major mint error from either mint can attract serious bidding whenever it appears at auction. Condition also plays a huge role in determining value. Although this coin is clearly circulated, many collectors build complete date and mint collections that include well-preserved fine examples. If a circulated coin also displays a dramatic and authenticated mint error, its value can rise far beyond what most people expect. Some certified error examples have sold for thousands of dollars, depending on the rarity and the strength of the mistake. Before you put any 1980 quarter aside, inspect it under a bright light or with a small magnifying glass. Look carefully around the date, the lettering, the edge, and both sides of the coin. Check for doubling on the inscriptions, unusual metal layers, missing design elements, or an off-center strike. These are the kinds of features that make collectors stop and take notice. Even a dirty old quarter deserves a careful inspection, because once a rare error enters the picture, the value can change dramatically. This is exactly why coin collecting continues to capture the imagination of Americans. Every old quarter carries its own history, and every coin offers the possibility of an unexpected discovery. Your worn 1980 Washington quarter may have spent decades in cash registers, piggy banks, and pockets across the country, but it could still hold a surprise that turns an ordinary piece of change into a collector's prize. And believe it or not, the next Washington quarter on our list has an even more fascinating story that every collector should know. Moving on to our next coin, here's another Washington quarter that many people would overlook without a second thought. This is the 1984D Washington quarter, and just like the previous coin, it has the appearance of a well-used piece of everyday pocket change. The surface is dark from years of circulation, the high points of the design show clear wear, and the overall condition falls into the fine grade. To most people, it's just another old quarter, but experienced collectors know that some of the biggest discoveries begin with coins that look exactly like this. The small D mint mark tells us this coin was struck at the Denver Mint in 1984. Hundreds of millions of quarters were produced there to meet the demand for circulating coinage across the United States. These quarters passed through countless hands over the years, buying groceries, paying tolls, and filling cash registers from coast to coast. Because so many were heavily circulated, finding one today in attractive original condition is becoming less common than many people realize. Take a closer look at this fine condition example. George Washington's portrait still has strong overall outlines, but the hair above the ear and around the ribbon has become noticeably smooth from decades of use. The lettering remains bold enough to read without difficulty, while the date and mint mark are still clearly visible. Turn the coin over, and you'll see the famous eagle design with moderate wear across the breast and wings. The feather details have blended together, giving the coin the classic appearance of a hardworking quarter that has faithfully served in circulation for many years. Its dark, dirty surface is completely natural for a coin that has spent decades changing hands, and that's actually something collectors often prefer. Original surfaces are usually far more desirable than coins that have been polished or cleaned. Now comes the exciting part. A standard 1984D Washington quarter in fine circulated condition is generally worth only face value unless it has something truly special. That's why smart collectors never stop at the date alone. They carefully inspect every coin for genuine mint errors and unusual striking characteristics that can dramatically increase collector demand. One of the first things experts look for is doubling in the lettering or date. They also search for off-center strikes, die cracks, retained cuds, clipped planchets, broad strikes, lamination errors, and missing clad layers. These mistakes happen during production at the mint and are completely different from ordinary damage caused after the coin entered circulation. Genuine mint errors are scarce, and when authenticated by a professional grading service, they can become the centerpiece of an advanced collection. Another factor that can surprise new collectors is condition rarity. While millions of 1984D quarters circulated, relatively few survived with exceptional original surfaces. If a coin combines a dramatic mint error with unusually strong preservation, competition among collectors can become intense. Certified examples with significant mint errors have sold for several $1,000s, and the rarest combinations have reached auction prices well into the tens of thousands of dollars. In extraordinary cases involving spectacular, one-of-a-kind mint errors and elite certified grades, auction results have climbed well beyond $100,000. Proving that even an ordinary-looking Washington quarter can become an extraordinary collectible. So, how can you identify a potentially valuable Washington quarter? Start by examining both sides under a bright light. Use a magnifying glass to inspect the date, mint mark, and lettering. Look carefully for doubling, cracks in the dies, unusual metal layers, off-center designs, or any feature that appears different from a normal quarter. Most importantly, never clean the coin. Even if it's dirty, that original surface is part of its history and can help preserve its collector value. This is what makes Washington quarters so fascinating. Millions were made, but only a tiny fraction have the rare characteristics collectors dream about finding. The difference between an ordinary 25-cent coin and an extraordinary collector's treasure often comes down to one small detail that most people never notice. If you're enjoying these incredible coin discoveries, don't forget to subscribe. Now, we've reached the final coin, and this is the one that surprises the most people. At first glance, this 1970D Washington quarter looks like a coin that belongs in the spare change jar. It's heavily worn, covered with dark discoloration, and has a rusty-looking appearance from decades of circulation and environmental exposure. Many people would assume it's damaged beyond saving and spend it without another thought. But in the world of coin collecting, appearances can be incredibly misleading. Sometimes the coin everyone ignores is the very one that deserves the closest inspection. The small D mint mark tells us this quarter was struck at the Denver Mint in 1970. By then, Washington quarters had already become one of America's most recognized coins, and millions were produced for everyday commerce. These quarters traveled through countless hands, buying everything from a morning newspaper to a tank of gasoline. Because they were used so heavily, finding examples with interesting mint errors or unusual production characteristics has become an exciting challenge for collectors. This particular coin shows very heavy circulation. Much of George Washington's hair detail has worn smooth, and the highest points of the portrait have blended together from years of use. The lettering is still readable, but it has softened with age. On the reverse, the eagle has lost much of its feather detail, giving the design a flat appearance that is typical of a well-worn coin. The dark, rusty-looking surface is most likely the result of environmental exposure, dirt, moisture, or staining after years in circulation. It's important to understand that a clad Washington quarter cannot literally rust like an iron coin because it is made from copper and nickel, but it can develop heavy corrosion, discoloration, and stains that create a rusty appearance. Most collectors would tell you that environmental damage usually lowers a coin's value. That's true for an ordinary quarter. However, before dismissing any old Washington quarter, experts always inspect it carefully because hidden mint errors can completely change the story. A damaged appearance does not automatically mean the coin has no collector interest. So what should you look for? Start with the date and mint mark. Then inspect the entire coin under bright light with a magnifying glass. Search for doubled lettering, off-center strikes, die cracks, clipped planchets, struck through errors, lamination flaws, missing clad layers, or other genuine mint mistakes that occurred before the coin ever left the mint. These are the features that serious collectors chase, and they can transform a common quarter into an exciting discovery. Another important step is checking the coin's weight. A missing clad layer or an incorrect planchet can cause the weight to differ from a normal Washington quarter. If the weight is unusual and the coin is professionally authenticated, it could become a highly desirable error coin. Professional grading services can determine whether the unusual appearance comes from a genuine mint error or simply from damage that occurred after the coin entered circulation. Normal 1970D Washington quarter in this heavily worn and environmentally damaged condition is generally worth only its face value. But the story changes dramatically if the coin displays a verified major mint error. Certified examples with significant striking errors have sold for thousands of dollars, while exceptionally rare combinations of dramatic mint errors and outstanding preservation have realized more than $75,000, and in extraordinary auction cases involving elite, one-of-a-kind errors, well over $250,000. Those headline-making sales are rare, but they remind collectors why every old quarter deserves a careful examination. What makes some Washington quarters valuable isn't simply their age. It's the combination of rarity, authentic mint errors, originality, collector demand, and professional certification. Most old quarters are ordinary, but every once in a while, someone discovers a coin with a remarkable production mistake that changes everything. That's why experienced collectors never judge a coin by its dirty surface alone. So the next time you're sorting through a jar of old change, don't ignore that worn, dark, or rusty-looking Washington quarter. Take a closer look at the date, the mint mark, the lettering, and every small detail. The coin that seems the least impressive could be the one that tells the most incredible story. Thank you for watching this Mint Mysteries. If you enjoyed today's countdown, be sure to subscribe, leave a comment telling us which Washington quarter surprised you the most, and share this video with another coin collector. You never know, the next incredible discovery could already be waiting in your pocket change.